Well, good morning everybody. Today is actually the 23rd of February 2025. Now, I've seen this amazing post here that was sent by my good friend Jeff Hall. It says to allow for these upgrades, this is to do with upgrading an XPT on the 1141 train from Sydney to Grafton. New South Wales TRAINLINK will operate two out of the six rail services between Grafton and Sydney. That's a bit of a trick because there's only three, but three returns in other words, with premium coaches for approximately 12 months from mid-March 2025. The remaining four daily rail services will continue to operate with XPT trains. Nice and handy, isn't it? So they're misleading people by saying 12 or 6 or whatever. They're doubling the numbers. But what I've got to ask is, what does TRAINLINK, sometimes called missing link by people, mean by a premium coach service? Well, first of all, I would imagine if they had common sense involved, which may not be the case, they'd have 3 buses. Two would probably serve Kempsey, Coffs Harbour and Grafton, and one would serve all stations other than those 3 stations all the way from Sydney to Grafton, to allow people to get on and off at various smaller stations. I mean, places like Taree and Maitland and a few other places along the way, like Kendall and Maxwell and Bucketheads and a number of other places could board this all stations bus service. Excuse me, and that's all it is, a bus service. So premium, let's see. Any of my friends who have been on the Spirit of Queensland and on the railbed service will have seen premium service. Why? 2 and 1 seating, and they lay flat completely for the night. People get a doona and a couple of pillows. Now, on this daylight replacement of the 1141, will it have 2 and 1 seating with entertainment, including movies, shows, music and everything, to each individual passenger on the bus? I would suggest right now, I'd be willing to put $100 on it. It's not going to happen. So maybe CountryLink or Missing Link could explain the term premium. Can anyone that I know who happens to view this, for example, explain the term premium in relation to the plan to cut the train out? I also explained to that person who made the post, and to my friend Jeff, that a 3-car Explorer train was used between Sydney and Dubbo to replace the XPT while its power cars were being upgraded. Incidentally, when they say upgraded, it would be electrical systems and, I don't know, some other features. It wouldn't be the passengers wouldn't get a Queensland Spirit of Queensland style seating for first class. They wouldn't get individual headsets for programs such as music and movies and record albums, shall we say. No, they wouldn't get any of that. So they just let that go, in my opinion. And then they will say, oh, 12 months, and we'll put the train back in. Well, my concern is, first of all, that when they talk about temporary, that they don't really mean temporary. And secondly, when they talk about putting it back, they're only 4 hours apart. This is not Europe. This is not, this is, even the United States or anywhere. This is 4 hours apart. Let's see, 1141 and 241. They're far too close together to be of any benefit to people along the route. Now, they would probably use that as an excuse to cut it out. All right, I'm not going to agree with that or disagree. I'm just saying that's what they'd probably say. Now, expanding a little on this in 2 areas. Number one, I have suggested, and I'm not alone in this, that the morning train out of Sydney that goes to Grafton should be extended to Brisbane, where it would arrive at approximately 9:15 p.m. and would depart again at 10:15 p.m. and arriving in Sydney at 12:15 p.m. the following day, which would be ideal for sleeping car passengers and for anybody really. And people from outside of Brisbane would have connections by train to the arrival and departure of those services. Now they're supposedly looking at that and considering that, but I've told them it must be 5 years ago about that as well, and nothing's been done. They complain about freight train services. Have you seen how many freight trains they are operating? Not that many. Now, if they departed at 10:15 p.m, is that going to interfere with the freight train? Well, the XPT whizzes by in 5 minutes, out of the section's gone. So it can't possibly delay the freight train. The second area of concern, and some people might be quite amazed, some people don't know about this. Sleeper coaches, that is to say, where people lay fully flat, they're on beds, in other words, have operated, well, since the late 1920s, I believe, in the United States, and they disappeared for quite a number of years and they've come back. There are only a very limited number of such services. I've been Los Angeles to San Francisco as one, and New York to Nashville, I believe, is another one. New Zealand has Auckland to Wellington with a sleeper coach, double-decker, and they're all over Europe and other parts of the world. Now, they'd be ideal for Australia. Indeed, I have in mind an articulated double-decker which would provide railway-style cabins for 4 and 2 passengers, number of each, and also the cabins where they are similar to those operating in the United States, where they are, in other words, 10 each side of the passageway. Yeah, they're 10 uppers and 10 lowers, but they're all single beds, and you choose your bed. You're not forced to lay beside a stranger for the night, as was the case, by the way, and some of my friends who see this might realise it. Many years ago, I think in the 1970s, there were sleeper buses between Sydney and Melbourne, and they were a complete and utter failure because they had people sleeping beside each other, strangers sleeping beside other people on an overnight journey. It didn't work. Only the 2-in-1 system would work, as like a rail pod, as some people describe them, like the Spirit of Queensland, or railway cabin style, in other words, as I've just described, and the articulated double-decker would do the job, and that'd do very well for private companies as well. And you could envisage it not only on Sydney, Melbourne, Sydney, Brisbane, but you could envisage it on a resumed Adelaide to Perth service, and Adelaide to Alice Springs, and Alice Springs to Darwin, and of course Brisbane to Cairns. So I need not expand that any further, other than saying there's a common sense idea, but I doubt that we'll introduce it quite yet. We're, after all, many decades behind the rest of the world when it comes to transport, aren't we? So anyway, I do welcome some civil and polite comments and discussion on these subjects, so thank you for viewing.